So I am here with Constantin Morun, and I know I don't say it perfectly. What's your background again?
I was born in Eastern Europe in Romania.
In Romania. Okay, so I'm not going to try and do an accent because I don't have that one. We met in a really strange way. We don't know each other very well, but you're a really interesting cat. So you happen to live in Halifax, just outside of Halifax in Bedford, Nova Scotia. I'm a Halifax resident as well. I live in Fall River, and we both have a friend in California,
Yes.
which is as far away in North America as they can get from us, which I thought was really awesome. And she said, "Oh my God, you have to talk." She said to me in another call, we are in a coaching group together. You have to talk to my friend Constantine. I was like, set it up. I'm totally down. So we talked for the shortest amount of time, 15, 20 minutes the other day. And I was like, no, this conversation, I don't want to talk anymore. I got to capture this. So that's what we're going to do. There's always the standard boring, oh, this is what Constantine does and this is who he can help. And all of that's kind of fluff. What I'd like to talk to you about is there has to have been a moment in your life, a massive transformation moment in your life that you will never forget, that allowed you to then center yourself to go in the direction you're going, because your direction, it'll come out in the rest of this, but I'd love to know that transformation moment, because that to me, it speaks volumes. It's what I look for with all my clients that I work with on the marketing side, is what's that transformation moment? What's the why that you do what you do? So I'm just going to stop talking.
Oh, Matthew. Well, first of all, hello to the audience. Yeah, no, it's been a beautiful way that we met. I no longer believe in coincidences. I feel everything is synchronized for our greatest good,
Yeah.
such as, the transformation we're about to talk, or that pivotal moment in my life. And that happened to be about, well, it was 2025. So it goes back to 2020 to 2021. At the time, I was working in corporate with Microsoft, and I had a fairly senior role that required a lot of man hours, so to speak, behind the keyboard and in person with various customers. And that had me working, 60, 70 hours week, especially because it was in the midst of the pandemic. And I was on a team that enabled people to work from home, which was very rewarding because it allowed me to help people that otherwise would be out of a job to be able to continue working for
Right.
organizations. But it also required me to work a lot of hours. And what I was doing back then was work 60, 70 hours and then look to escape the reality that I'm working that much and I really don't have a life, and I'm not following my passions and my vision. And I would game, enjoy food, right? All the pleasures that we have grown to like in this society, the distract.
I enjoy food as well.
Nothing wrong with food, don't get me wrong. But when you combine food with Netflix and gaming and then like being on your phone for like 6 hours a night, and then guess what happens,
Distractions.
right? You
Yeah.
end up going to bed at like 3 a.m., wanting to wake up for 8 a.m. so you can work again for like those 10, 12 hours. And then the cycle repeats. The weekend comes and you're like, yes, the weekend. And then you're like, wow, it's Sunday already. And then you get down on yourself and you're like, oh, I have to go to work tomorrow again, right? So I was in the cycle. And at the same time, I was also chasing a big promotion, which I got in 2021. I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? More money, more recognition, more responsibilities, all the things you would want. And some you didn't. But all of a sudden, when the dust settled, like every time you chase something, right, you get there, and then it's like, well, what's next? It's like you don't even get to enjoy the beautiful things that have come up out of it because you're like, oh shit, was I even
Yeah.
chasing the right thing? And
Yeah.
that was me.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. I mean, that's when I started into not working for others and just helping people. It was the exact same thing. It was feeling like, wow, I got to go back, as opposed to, hey, I get to go back. Right? It's a completely different side of the world. Oh man. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's, of course, no need to apologize. And so the journey truly began. And I mean, I've always been into personal development, especially professional development. My career progressed fairly fast, and from all points of view, external of me, I had made it, right? Successful career at Microsoft, which is one of the top employers in the world. Let Canada, good perks, good salary, all of it. But it just, the fulfillment aspect, the joy aspect wasn't there. And no matter how many shiny toys you throw at it, it's not going to make it better. If you're empty on the inside, if you don't enjoy at least some of the moments at work, then you're like, why am I even doing all of this, right? So from that, people are like,
Absolutely.
man, you've got the relationships, you've got the job, you've got this, people want in my life. And on days I'm like, why would you? Like, I'm miserable most of the time. Yeah, I'm putting on a facade. I'm showing up as a different person. And you know what, Matthew, the more I stood, but I thought I was alone, right? I was like, I'm the only one that goes through this. I'm not going to burden people with my problems because, hey, look, I have all these things. People don't, and they're happier than me. I'm not going to burden them. And the more I progressed on the path, the more I realized that actually I was never alone. I just chose to be alone. And second of all, it's like most people I know, either in the entrepreneurial world or the corporate world, go through this pain and this realization at some point in their life. And then if they're like me, which I've seen so many, who end up wanting to do it all yourself, which will take a long time, and it may burn you out in the process, right? Because you're probably already burnt out anyway. So that's kind of what it brought me here, where I'm like, okay, so I spent years, so like from 2021 to about 2023, I went through my own dark night of the soul. I did a lot of different things to understand what's going on, because I'm someone that will take this on and I'll be like, I need to research this. Dove deep into psychology, into other personal development stuff, professional development. I wanted to understand what was going on. And, the more I understood, I'm the type of person that's like, I want to take this and I want to share with others because they need to know. And then they can make their own choices. If they want to progress through their path, if they want to go on this journey, fine, but like they need to know at least. So that's kind of the start of my podcast. And the start of this journey of like going back to my coaching roots, because I've always been a coach, be it in soccer. I played professional poker for a while and I was a coach there for like 10 years. And all these things in the corporate world, I've been a mentor and a coach to executives and peers alike, right? So I've always done that. It's almost like that's been preparing me for this stage where now I help people align with their vision for their life, reduce the number of hours they work, because I went from like 70 hours to like less than 40, while being able to enjoy my passions and work on my business and do all the things I want to do, including spending time with my family and my dogs and all of that. And how can we get people to do more of what they like, spending less time, increasing their profits, right? If you're a sales executive, increasing sales. If you're an entrepreneur, increasing or improving the relationships you have and the bottom line, right? And that's really what I step in. And I get to work with such amazing individuals that not only want to change their life, but they want to make the world a better place. And those are my kind of people. And I think that's why we got connected to begin with anyway, because you're in a similar field. And I know just from talking to you, we haven't talked about this, but you're probably not doing it just for yourself. Like you probably want the world to be a better place too.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So yeah, I mean, this shouldn't be about me, but you're exactly right. So I mean, today Fridays are my about me, about my business, about my team, about my family. Like I take Fridays for me, and so I get to do this, and this is spiritually enriching because I'm a high extrovert. I love to connect with people, but the rest of my day, I was talking with production people, people that are connected to me that way. I was talking with teammates, writers, and strategists for the Wizard of Ads, who are all ready to take on new challenges in 2025. And we're planning for what that's going to look like. And we're using this MatthewBurns.com, reach forward as to grow everybody's business and education and well-being. And so, no, it's not about me. It's about everybody. It's funny. I'm going to throw in at somewhere my first radio ad that's now going. It's now down in Texas. I've got a radio ad to try and drum up some business. And the writer for that, because I didn't write my own ads, she said, Matthew, I wrote an ad. It's really weird. And I'll play it. Actually, I'm going to pause.
Yeah.
And I'm going to play it. And then I'm going to come back into the video to do this. So I'm going to cut this portion of the video out. I'm going to play it here. And then you and I are just going to react like you heard it, but I'll play it for you before we finish.
Of course.
But yeah, but the whole video. So, okay. 3, 2, 1. So you see, like the entire premise is it's not about me. It's about what my team can do to help people, because it's not about me. It's about, I just happen to be, I'm like the queen. I'm just like, hey, look at where we do these things, but everybody else does the work and they're way more important than I am. And I truly believe that. So when you said that, I got all excited. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you're corporate. I mean, highly corporate, and you're chasing the dream. You're getting up the ladder. You're doing everything. You have this realization that you're not fulfilling yourself the way you want to be fulfilled. You take this action. You start to learn. Tell me when it was low. Like tell me like where my heart always kind of rings true is when I go, I knew because this pivotal moment. So like I know you went through this transformation, but there has to be that last thing. What was the last straw?
The last one was the promotion, because I was so excited to get a promotion. So this was in like, I want to say late 2021. Well, actually,
Okay.
half of 2021.
Wait a second. No, hang on. Don't even explain that. You know what? So wait a second. So you get this thing you've been driving towards, this thing this is my goal. This is my, whenever you put it in place, you said, I'm going to travel this distance. You get it and you become disenfranchised from it.
Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain, right? You get to the very top, and the top of the mountain is like, well, what's next now? Because your vision in that regard, like mine, was a fixed point in time, a fixed outcome in a specific way that you want. So in my case, it was, I want this promotion. I want it to look this way. So in other words, I didn't necessarily have a vision. Yeah, I knew that I wanted to climb the corporate ladder further, right? Go into management, do all these things. So I had a rough idea, but my focus was on those material gains initially. And that's where I see a lot of people stumbling a lot, because there's nothing wrong with focusing on material gains of sorts. But what I've noticed is that when you actually flip it on its head and you focus on you as a person and what you can become and what you can give others, the material stuff becomes a byproduct of it. So by me showing up authentically, vulnerably, bringing more of my genius to the table, regardless of it being in a corporate world, in an entrepreneurial world, or whatever avenue you find yourself in, you're going to attract those material things you've been chasing before. But when we start, like how most of, I would say, this society works right now, and I was part of it, and I'm still part of it, right? It's like you're chasing the material things first. You're then trying to mold yourself to fit whatever they tell you, whatever the gurus say, whatever the professionals say. And that's going to go often against who you feel you are at your heart level, which is what results in that burnout, in the stress, in the overwhelm, in the depression and then anxiety and procrastination and hesitation, all those symptoms that we all suffer from one stage or another, because what we do is not aligned with who we are. But we don't know who we are because we don't spend enough time to realize who we are, because we don't have the time, because everyone tells us what you want is outside of you. You want this purse, you want this promotion, you want this next step on the ladder, or this fancy car, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So you have this realization, I'm not going to chase after the material. I'm going to chase after what makes me, or you, Constantine. There's got to be a difference in the way you help others versus the way you started down your path. So what were the first steps that you took to then shift away from that corporate, ladder chase to looking inwards and fixing what you were wanting to mend or create internally?
Exactly. So I went in many directions, right? And I would say, based on like the framework I use right now with my clients, that results in significant success really fast, which is more about slowing down to speed up. I found the different pieces at different times, not necessarily in the order I realize that they can be done now, that's why it shrinks down the time that someone requires to see progress, significant progress, and improvement in their conditions of overwhelm and stress and burnout, lack of time, right? Lack of productivity in a way. And for me, it started with doing something I never did before, which was I gave myself 3 weeks off, which I've never taken 3 weeks off. And I went to Ecuador by myself, not knowing necessarily much of the language or anyone there. And part of it was a retreat I attended, again, my first time at a retreat. And that opened me up significantly. You mentioned spiritually earlier, right? The word spiritually, that's what it did to me, because I was so much of a science guy, like a material-based person, that I hadn't necessarily considered the spiritual aspect of my being. And that's what this retreat opened me up. I mean, I got to see people living a much simpler life and having more joy. I got to interact with people in a community that came from all corners of the world and walks of life. And, after a week and a half, we became best friends. Like, in fact, quite a few of them are still really good friends to this day, 3.5 years later. And it's like, it blows me away, because at that point, I had been in Halifax for 4 years. And the friends I made at this random retreat over 7 days, 7 to 10 days, depending, some stayed less, I could consider them better friends than anyone else I had met and befriended in Halifax. And I'm like you, I'm an extrovert at times. I like to hang out with people. I play soccer, I play board games. So I always went, hiking, all the stuff. I met people. But what I realized is that the connection that gets formed in a society that's driven by material gains and like the superficial stuff, the distractions are very superficial at a higher level. Not saying that it's bad, right? Because there is a time when you just want to have a beer and just talk about, I don't know,
Sure.
or whatever. But
Yeah.
they don't go below the surface because, especially for men out there listening, right? It's tough to open up to another man and say, man, I'm struggling, I'm, having a hard time in my relationship or my job, or I'm depressed, or I feel like, I've had enough and I want to go. Like, none of the stuff happens, at least not in the circles I've been part of. And I realized that there was definitely a big aspect of what was missing. And as I was going through my journey, it opened me up. And what I've realized that for me, I never stop, Matthew, to take a look at what my inner compass says. Get clear. What are my core values? What are those strengths that I've developed over the years? Sure, I mean, I can see them in my work at Microsoft or beyond, but like, let's actually document that. Let's actually take a look. How about my gifts? Gifts are a bit different than strengths. I see that gifts as what you were born with and what you, kind of like your zone of genius. What do you excel at more so than others? You may take it for granted, but you have a gift for something that maybe you're not even realizing, right? What are my
Absolutely.
priorities, right? What are my passions? You could call it purpose, right? Because that kind of comes out of it. Like, what do you think your purpose in this life is? If you think you have one, you don't necessarily have to. But, or what is your why? Like, why are you doing things? You talked about why earlier. Like, why are you doing what you're doing right now? So if I'm chasing to make $1 million this year, I bet you it's not because of the money. What does that money represent? Some form of freedom, right? Some form of enhanced relationship with someone or someone's, right? Like all those things. So to me, the first step is always about, let's get clear on the things that we A, take for granted, or B, we haven't had a chance to get clear.
Right. Exactly. That's incredible. It's funny. I'd heard a long time ago, and I've cycled through how to say it in my own way, but I believe that money's the fuel I need to do the thing that I want to do. Not money isn't the thing I want. Money's the fuel that gets me to where I want to go. And so if I concentrate on where I'm going, the money typically just fills the tank. And so I never strive for attainment of a financial goal. I've strived for an attainment of connections. I spend most of my time going, how many connections can I make this year? Because those connections will always result in more. I don't know what that more is. I don't know what the final number of that more is, but I know it's going to be more. And what that led me to do was quit my full-time job that I love working there, but it allowed me to quit having to wake up at 7 and, wake up at 5, get there for 7, finish at 3, rush around to do the things I need to do so that I can be with the family and spend quality family time versus still having to do my own thing or fulfill my stuff, to where I didn't trade time for money anymore. I always provide a service or a value to whoever I'm in the room with, whether that's a financial arrangement or just an emotional relationship arrangement that I have with people. And it's allowed me to, where I started this off saying Fridays of the day, I just get to do whatever I want. I actually get to do whatever I want. I chose Friday's my day. Saturday, I always have something to do in the house with my wife or with the kids. I have 2 grown kids. They're both adult children. One's in college, and the other one he started his own business. So they both live at home, but that's where I spend time with them. Sundays are usually more calm, more quiet, more like I can do some introspect. I can be completely lazy. I can eat whatever I want. And then I spend 4 days a week working with the people that have paid me to be available for them. And I do the work to help move whatever needle that they're asking me to help them move. And so, but it was making the decision that I don't need an amount of money. I need an amount of connections. So I traded what my goal was. And my life is completely different in 5 years. Like this is the end of my 5-year journey. It's completely upside down different.
That's beautiful. I love that. And connections, right? I always speak about the fact that if you look at everything you have in your life, right, you always have a relationship with it, be it an object or someone or something.
Yeah.
And one relationship that we often overlook is the one with ourselves. Because if you're someone that's a high achiever, and if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you're a high achiever. You're someone that wants more out of yourself and what you're giving to the world and what you're doing. That means you're going to work really hard to make everything happen. And usually that means sacrificing yourself in the process. Like, I can't tell you how many nights I sacrifice, how many weekends, how many dinners with family because, well, my job comes first, my business comes first, right? And that's not uncommon at all. And it sounds like you've been able to come on the other side of it and be like, no, I need to put myself first, because when I take care of me, then the business is doing better. Then the relationship with my wife and the relationship with all these other people are much better because I'm not running on empty. I'm not running on like fumes. My tank is full so that I can give to others.
It's funny because I like the way you said that, but I'm still struggling. Like I'm still trying to manage how much I give to who. I mean, I travel a lot for work. I'm usually gone 1 or 2 weeks every month out, and so that's taking away from family. That's taking away from with my wife. My wife now and we try to travel together. So if I'm going to do a trip, then I just say, hey, listen, take some of your vacation time, come with me. Yes, I'll be doing a little bit of work, but I always have time to. So that we don't miss all of that time. The boys are, like I said, young adults. So they've got girlfriends and, things that they want to do. And it doesn't include mom and dad anymore. So I'm trying to still navigate that. But what I realized was I just had to have faith that as long as I was doing things to get better connections, which includes better connections with my wife, better connections with my kids, better connections with my animals. I have 2 dogs, better connections with the neighbors. Like it includes everything is about a new and a better way to communicate and connect. The rest of it just fills in its gaps.
Yes.
And I don't know how to, it's hard because it just became this faith exercise. And I'm not a religious man. I was born into a Catholic family. I was baptized Catholic. I was very religious as a young human, right into, being an altar boy and, participating heavily in the church. And I do not participate in religious activities at this point in my life, but I found I'm much more faithful, much more spiritual than I've ever been in my entire life.
Likewise, I'm the same.
I don't have a fear deity anymore. I have a relationship with the universe. It's a completely different feeling. And it makes me feel happier. So you said it, things happen for a reason, right? And having this conversation with you has brought out a whole bunch of other real truths about how I've been able to, and you've almost given me a therapy session just in this conversation where I get to then just level myself. And when I'm level, more happens. When I'm not level, less happens.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to psychology. My background is sciences, math, computer science, right, psychology, and neuroscience. And they've shown in so many studies now that your thoughts and beliefs create your reality. And if you're spiritual, like Matthew and I are, and some people listening, you hear people in the spiritual realm talk about how you co-create with the universe. Now, if you look at those 2 sentences, like you create your reality, with your thoughts and beliefs, and you co-create with the universe, those are the same. That's the same thing. It doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you fall on, you're creating your own reality. So if you create your own reality, to me, that means that you're now empowered to make different choices because you know that every choice you make creates your reality. So if I'm not happy with my job, if I'm not happy with the relationship I have with myself, let's say I beat myself down all the time, I may not know where I'm going, I don't have a vision. You're the only one that can change that. You can hire someone like me, but nothing is going to happen unless you take those action steps, right? Yes, you can get a framework. Yes, you can get support. You can get guidance, but it has to be you that makes a decision that I need to make. I need to take the next step. And in my case, I did that. And I chose to do it alone. It took me a couple of years to figure it out. And had I chosen differently, like, if I had chosen to go to a coach right away or like a mentor or even a therapist, I could have probably shrunk that down significantly. And that's where I see a lot of opportunity in this space. It doesn't matter what type of, because you do marketing, right?
Yes.
I tried to figure out the marketing alone. I know I'm not a marketing expert. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't spend years doing it.
Right, yeah.
Why don't I stay in my line, or my lane rather, my lane of genius, and then pay people like you that have figured it out and be like, hey, I don't need you to force me to do something. Just guide me to find my own answers. And that's really what I see a lot of opportunity in this space, be it coaching, being entrepreneurship, where it's less about being told you need to do all these steps, more like, here's a framework, we can help you with it, but you'll find your own answers in the process. And some things will have to be fixed. I think you and I talked about this on Monday or a few days ago. And some things are very flexible where you can bring your own genius into it. And to me, that's what I love the most about what I do right now, is because I help people find their own answers. I don't have their answers. I don't claim to have them, and I don't want to have them because you have your own answer. But I can guide you to find answer that you're looking for.
As much as you want to, and so this is your data, so you get to share as much or as little as you want.
Of course.
When you start working with a new powerful human being who's just getting overwhelmed with their situation, or they want to find more time, or whatever pathway they take to get to start speaking with you, where do you start? What's kind of the first little bit of advice, communication, focus? Where do you start to help them?
Oh, I love the question. I mean, it always comes down to understanding their situation and how they view it. And in the way that someone describes to you their situation, you can quickly discern, at least from my perspective, their relationship with themselves. Because oftentimes we are our harshest critic and we don't even realize. So like the way we talk to ourselves, the way we allow certain stories of our life to control our life and our actions, we wouldn't recommend those to or do those to anyone else, but we do it to ourselves. And so for me, for most, I mean, this is the majority of people. So if we were to look at diagnosing people in a way, it's like, let's look at the relationship you have with time, first, time and productivity, because people come into my world to increase productivity while reducing the time investment and increasing sales or whatever the bottom line that's important to you. So those are the three reasons they come into my life. They want to make more money, spend less time, and then that means more productivity.
Yes.
So first we want to look at the relationship with time and productivity. Is time controlling you or are you controlling time? Most people are being controlled by time in a way. And in that process, the next step is the relationship you have with yourself. Realizing that investing in yourself, and if you're talking to me, I'm already investing some resources into it, even if it's just time, but it's realizing that actually the more you invest in yourself, the more you get back to invest in everything else you want. So it's a bit counterintuitive for most people because they're like, well, I can't take 5 hours next week to spend time on me because then I'm not going to have enough time for this action in the business, or I'm not going to have this much time for my family. Not realizing that those 5 hours you spend on you is going to give you back extra X more time in the future for the things you want, like even depending on what you do. So it's that idea of slowing down, meaning slowing down all the craziness that's outside of you so you can go within and you can then speed up significantly. So I would say the first step, relationship with time and productivity, relationship with yourself, right? So that's the connection piece we were talking about. And then the last piece, or I should say the last, there's a third piece, is the relationship you have with what I call your aligned life blueprint, or a simple word could be vision. Like, what's your vision for, what do you actually want? Because let's actually ask you, Matthew, here, like, what do you want most in life?
I mean, I think I said it. I've been talking with, I have a coach, because I think everybody should have somebody in their life that helps to keep them accountable. I'm big on that. I was talking to my coach earlier today, and he asked me a question because there's a mastermind that I want to go to. And he goes, okay, why do you want to go to the mastermind? What are you going to get out of it? Is it the education? Is it the time away from the family? Like, what is it? What's the reason? And I said, no, it's because I want to be in a room with a bunch of people who are like me, who want to be in a room with a bunch of people like me. And so I think really what I want out of life, and I said it earlier, is I want more connections. I really want to talk to as many people so I can understand the most I can about every viewpoint of the subject. So because I spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs, small, medium-sized businesses about how they got going, where they came from, I realized that they're all the same. But I wouldn't know that by talking to 3. I only know that by talking to thousands. Do you know what I mean? It's yes, the actual words may be different, but did you notice you got to this point in your life, realized there was something that you were missing, and then you did this, and now you're running what you wanted to, and they go, oh yeah, so let's tell people that story, which is why I started this interview with, what was your transformation moment? Because the transformation moment guides you it shows all about your learning. I realized all of this isn't important, but all of this is. And so I've wrapped myself around what is important. And so I just really enjoy hearing those stories and then giving advice if it makes sense, if I'm asked for it, if it makes sense, or sharing my story and how it's the same. And I show how we're connected and we're the same. Even though I started from a different point, I got to this point, which we all get to, and hopefully earlier than later. Hopefully we can get to our inflection point, our transformation point earlier in life, so that we can be spending most of our life living for us, not living for the paycheck. And so So yeah, so I think if you're to, again, and this is pretty deep, but what I really want in life is more connections.
So that's what I would go deeper, right? So for example, let's say you and I were to jump on a discovery call, and this is a discovery call, right? You said, okay, I want more connections. You explained a bit of the why you want them, right? You want to understand what they're doing to see if you can help and support. And if we were in a session and I would ask you to go a bit deeper. Why is that important to you? Like, what does it do for you? Because in the end, everything that we do in life, if you think about like, I'm going to chase a paycheck, right? Let's go there for a second. There's a reason, because there's usually a fear that's driving you to do that. Usually, meaning that I have a fear that if I'm not going to show up to my job, I'm going to get fired and I'm going to lose my place. My partner is going to leave me because I can't provide anymore. I may not have the food I want at the table. I may not be able to afford the vacation I want or the clothes I want. So there's a fear of something there, usually, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, or below that, which is a fear of enoughness. Like you don't feel like you're enough if you don't check off these boxes the society told you to check off. So when I look at something, like when someone tells me, okay, I ask them what their vision is. First of all, I want to congratulate you because you have a vision. You know what you want. Most people, usually the way they answer the question, Matthew, and if you find yourself in the audience nodding here, this is maybe a cue to try something else. They'll answer what they don't want. Well, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to work for someone else. I don't want to do this. And science has shown us, and of course spirituality too, is that like what you put your focus on is what you're going to get.
Yes.
Like you're going to focus on that, and it's like you're going to get more of that. So now coming back to what I was asking you, right? It's like I would dig deeper if I were you, and I would say, okay, well, is my desire for these connections coming from a place of fear or coming from a place of love? Not in like, oh, I love you as in a romantic.
No.
Yeah, I mean, for people listening as well, it's more from a place of like, I'm doing this because that's my inner spark. That's my light coming through, and it really lights me up. I feel like this is my mission in this life. And anyway, that's...
No, okay. So thank you. And I can answer this one, I think, fairly easily with a small story. So I grew up, for the most part, with a single parent. So I had my mom raised me and my brother and my sister. My father was a very conflicted man. He was an alcoholic and a womanizer. And my mom one night in the middle of the night stole us and took us across the country. We were living in Edmonton, and she stole us across the country. Until I was 8 years old, I never lived in a province for more than one school year. And so I never made real connections with anybody. I don't really feel I made very good connections with anybody. I spent a lot of time with my mom and my dad, my mom more. And when my mom finally told me the stories of why things were the way they were, because when I was 8 years old, I didn't perceive them the same way. I decided that I was never going to treat a woman, specifically in the conversation, the way my mom was treated. I would never, which ended up just being, I'm not going to treat a human being the way my mom was treating, is what it turns into. But I was protecting my mom's honor in that moment. And because I had never really settled and connected, I was always kind of fake and false. And I never, like you said, there's a lot of superficial conversation, not a lot of deep conversation. And what I realized over the last 10 years of my life is that the deeper I go, the more connected I feel. And I realize that we're not singular as humans, right? And so because of that, all I want is that now. It's kind of like my chocolate, right? It makes me happy to know that the more I talk to people, and from every race, creed, every corner of the earth, we all have the same story. Yeah, bread is called something different, or the word mother means something slightly different. But the true essence of what mom is the same, and what mom means to a child is the same. And when you realize that, then everybody's origin is the same, everybody's transformation is the same, and everybody's end is the same. I love that. To me, that's beautiful. And so it's what guides me in the way I write for television and radio commercials, because I tell the story of the person and who they are that is the same as everybody else. And they go, oh my God, I went through that same thing, or oh, that's not quite the same, but yeah, I remember having to make a decision on that too. And now all of a sudden, the story of the brand, the story of the owners of the brand, everybody's story, and they're just trusted and loved and connected with. And it's that connection that I seek.
Yeah, I mean,
so I would say for love. If you're going to say which side of it is, it's for love. Yeah,
that's the biggest discernment challenge that we as humans have is to discern, is this coming from a place of fear or love, and without judgment. Because if it comes from a place of fear, it's not bad, good, or indifferent. It just is. It's giving you an opportunity to switch that should you want to, right? Because I'd rather be driven by something I enjoy doing than by the fear of losing something that I enjoy doing, right? And it's like, there's a whole other aspect to it. It's kind of this idea. I always remember growing up how afraid I was of the dentist. And, like I would be like, oh, Friday I need to go see the dentist. And then the entire week was ruined because I would be like, oh, I have to go see the dentist. Yeah. Like, what I was focusing on is like my displeasure of seeing a dentist, when in reality, it was just a fear of whatever I was feeding, so to speak. And that one was the easy one to discern, right? But now back to relationships for a second. In my 20s, so I'm 41 right now, but in my 20s and early 30s too, like I would chase relationships, not just romantic, but with people around me, more out of a fear of being rejected and abandoned in a way, be like, oh, I need to belong to some groups or some tribes, if you may. So then that's when you start to put on masks and facades and pretty much have no boundaries, right? Like boundaries is another big thing that I help clients through as well. It's like, how do we say no more often? How do we stand in our truth? And that's what these connections usually, for most of us, that I've seen, I'm seeing with my friends and I see with myself, like I'm always challenged, like, am I doing this because I want to or because I feel I need to? And there's such a big difference there. And it sounds like you'll be able to do quite a bit of work on that and be able to discern a bit better, but that's always going to be a challenge for those that don't look into it, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. There's been a theme through this that kind of resonates with me, and because we talk about it when we look at how do we help people when we guide them through making decisions for how to communicate with their employees, let's say, or communicate outwards. And we talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
And you're spending a lot of time talking about where that human is in their hierarchy of needs. So, I mean, basic needs being food, water, shelter, and then hierarchy needs being connection and the feeling of fitting in and having a tribe that think and breathe like us. And when you make different decisions depending on where you are in that hierarchy, right? So when you don't have food, shelter, and you're going to steal, kill, whatever you need to do so you can survive, versus when all you want to do is really, fit into your group, you're making a completely different decision on how you live your life, what your morality is. And so this is beautiful, dude. You work your way into the brain enough that you say, hey, listen, where are you in that hierarchy? And are you okay with it? And if you're not, then make different decisions. And like, to me, that's wicked. And how all these are connected. I love it.
Yeah, because one thing I'll add really quick here, right? I mean, in the corporate world, I'm a certified project manager, organizational change manager, and all the beautiful stuff, right, that requires you to understand people at a certain level. And in those frameworks they use in the corporate world, these are frameworks that have been used for like decades and decades, very successfully for massive projects, tens of thousands of people, millions in the end, right? And they all start with one step, which is awareness. You cannot change that you do not know. So what you describe here is, if I can help you see something you couldn't see before, that gives you then the opportunity to make a change. Again, I believe in free will. You have a choice to make, but you know that if let's say, I'll give you another story really quick here. I had a belief in my life that I do not like, and I'm afraid of cold water. Now we live in Canada, right? So all water is cold pretty much all year long, even when it's warm in the summer. And I would see people enjoy swimming in a lake in July, and I'll be like, no, that's miserable for me. And I took that for granted, Matthew, for 40 years of my life. And there's a place here near us. By the way, if you haven't been there, I would recommend taking your wife. It's called Sensi Nordic Spa. It's in...
Sensi is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And they have cold plunges, right?
Yes, yeah.
Really cold. And I will see people go in, put their ankles in, run away. Some will stay 30 seconds. Then I started doing research, and I'm like, wow, this is really good for your body. So I would be in the hot tub, and then I would get ready to go to the cold plunge, and then this fear would overtake me. And it would tell me everything I wanted to hear so I don't go in the cold plunge. And one day I'm like, no, I'm going to be a man. I'm going to, man up, how we say it. And I would go in and I would stay 10, 15, 20 seconds, and I would be the most miserable I've ever been, by far. Until one day, as I'm progressing to my journey, this was a couple of years ago now, I go in, and instead of fighting the fear with fear, so like the fear would come over me, I got curious and I just asked questions like I went into meditation and asked questions like, what, what's it trying to tell me? Long story short, it literally took me to a level, it answered, and it showed me a vision of where my mother, when I was about 2 years old, was in the mountains in Romania, about to go on a boat ride, and the dock that she was on, that she was about to step to go into the boat, collapsed under her, and she fell in the water with me as a baby. She submerged all the way through. She was able to hold me up, but her fear essentially transferred over to me. I picked up her story and it became my story. And then over the years, I made it bigger and bigger. Now, this was shown to me, let's call it in meditation, while I was at the spa. And then 2 weeks later, I talked to my mom and she pretty much described the same story to a T. I knew just tiny details. And I'm like, that's interesting. 2 weeks later, come back to the spa. The first time I go on the cold plunge, there is no fear. Cold is cold because it's like March, so like minus 15. And I stayed there for 3 minutes. Matthew, I have never done more than 30 seconds. I'm in there, it's minus 15. People are looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm staying there for first time 3 minutes. I'm laughing like a madman because I'm like, this is so cool. Go out, come back, stay another 5 minutes. And I'm like, this is amazing. So all I did was I got curious and I became aware that this story that was driving my life was actually not my story. And all I had to do was release it and put a new story in its place. And that's the power we have as a human being. But if we don't have that awareness, then all those stories will just drive our life and nothing else.
I love how you started that with instead of being judgmental, you were curious. Right? You weren't passing judgment onto the situation. You opened your mind to being curious to it. And it's funny, it's the silliest way that I ever came to this saying of be curious, not judgmental, which was watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV. And he tells this awesome story. And if you haven't seen,
I've seen a couple episodes, but it's pretty good. I heard.
It's funny. But he says this, and it's, I don't think he was the first person to say, but it's been said that Walt Whitman was the one who quoted this, but it's be curious, not judgmental. And what that really means is be open-minded, not closed-minded is all it means. It's the easiest way to say it is be open-minded, because your experience is limited to your view, to your vision. And as soon as you open up your vision, your experience can open up as well. And I'm not, my wife is like off the charts arachnophobic, which means that spiders demoralize her. Like she sees a spider and she's packing her bags and she's called the realtor. Why do we have a spider in the house? And so, she's got a matchbook. She's ready to light the house on fire to get rid of the spiders, knowing full well that in Canada, we have very few spiders that could even affect us in any way whatsoever. And she knows it's an irrational fear, but she's not curious to getting past it. And now, please, if you're a psychologist and you're watching, please don't yell at me. I know she should talk to people, and there's more to it than this. I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, because I have an irrational fear of eye drops. I don't want anything touching my eyeballs. Like I'll never wear contact lenses, so my glasses is what I get. Like irrational. I know that it's like anything else. You can fix it, but don't touch mine. So I get that. I'm just saying that the more you can be curious about things, the more you can be open-minded about things, the more you're open to new experiences and new ways of thinking. And as soon as you do that, the world becomes great. And that's what I had to do by being curious about companies. That's why my entire program right now is interviewing more people so that I can talk and get more. Like, you don't think I'm going to talk about this for the next week? I'm going to talk about how I talked to Constantin, how this dude just blew. He gave me a therapy session I wasn't expecting. My brain is like, man, like I've been doing the right things, but I need to do more of it. So like, wonderful, man. Beautiful, beautiful.
I love what you said there, all of it. And I want to piggyback on something you said with your wife and you with your eye drops. That's the beauty, because you become aware of it and then you make a choice. You're like, you know what? I have other problems I want to deal with first. Maybe, in a year or so, you go, Matthew, you know what? I want to get laser eye surgery. I don't like the glasses. Let's actually get over the fear of something touching my eyes, right? And then you get curious. And I always joke that, like, if you think about it, it literally took me 5 minutes to get over my fear of cold water, Matthew, but it took me 40 years to get there.
Right? Yeah, right. Yeah.
It took me 2 minutes, but really it was 40 years plus 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it was.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And then how people talk about, become a millionaire or you're a 6-figure business owner in 6 months, but they don't look at like the 40 years or the 30 or the 50 years it took to get you to the level to do that.
It was the lady who invented Spanx. I apologize for anybody. I don't remember her name, but the lady who invented Spanx, she was quoted once saying she was a 7-year overnight success.
Yes.
She said one day, all of a sudden, everybody knew her. But before that, the day before, nobody knew her, but she had already been doing business for 7 years. And all of a sudden, it was this thing. So that's what you're talking about is, yes, all of those experiences, everything that's led you to that moment, which is why I said, I hope and pray for anybody that's watching, if you're younger, good for you. Because, this is a big conversation for anybody that's younger. If you're younger and you can figure out what it is you really want in life and you can go through your transformation moment earlier, God bless you. Like, I hope that happens for you. Living in your best life early than late. I went through mine in my 40s. I was 45 when I really started to think about how I wanted to live my life. I'm now 52. And if you can do it earlier, then great. But no matter how old you are, go through that transformation where you're doing things because you want it, because it's fulfilling your ego to be the best human you can be for the purpose that fulfills you. I think it's
it's funny because it's both never too late or never too early to start. Wherever you are right now, you can always make a choice to invest more in yourself, get curious more with yourself. If there's something you don't like, the job you have, the house you have, the partner you have, the way you look, the way you act, the way you behave, not any of it. Okay, well, what's stopping you from changing that? Get curious, ask questions. And here's what science shows us as well. And I won't go into the details really quick because I want to get the next point, which is like, you're 52. I thought you were like 40 or maybe late 30s.
Thank you.
But what science shows us, Matthew, and what blows me away is that when you ask a question to your conscious mind, you're always going to get an answer. Your subconscious mind, which is below the surface, collects all the information. So if I ask a question, which is something I used to do before, and you can laugh at me all you want, all of you listening, I would ask questions like, why am I so stupid, right? You do something, you stumble, it's like, man, I can't believe how stupid I am, right? And then your conscious mind goes, oh, Constantin wants to know why he's stupid. Well, here's examples. When he was 5 on the playground, he stumbled and a kid made fun of him and told him how stupid he was. And then his grandmother was upset with him when he was 7 and she told him that he's stupid, right? But then you also have the example of the opposite. So much of it is a choice. Where do you put your focus on? So it's reframing, right? But become aware of like the conversations you have with yourself. And Here's the funny thing. If you don't have an answer, let's say I ask the question, how should I make $1 million? Your conscious mind goes like, shit, he wants to, sorry, I didn't mean to swear there, but like, it's like, oh, Snoop, Constantine wants to know how to make $1 million. Let's look in our database, which is your subconscious mind. You may or may not have the answer. If you don't have the answer, guess what? That's what your focus is going to be. And the best way to realize this is to think back to any time you wanted a specific car, a color or a brand, or a pair of shoes, or anything that you put your focus on, and then all of a sudden in your universe, more red cars appeared or more Jordans appeared.
100%.
Not because they're more, but because that's how you start to filter the world.
Pilots are taught this, that they're never supposed to, in their brains, because bird strike is a big thing. So like, taking off and having birds go through the engine is a big thing. And there could be a lot of damage, right? So they're told to not think about birds. They're actually told to like think about where's the open sky. Only go for the open sky. Downhill skiers, it's the exact same thing. When you're doing alpine skiing and you're going through the trees, you could say, oh, I don't want to hit trees. I don't want to hit trees. Yeah. And all you're going to see is trees. If you go, hey, look at that path, all you're going to see is a path and the trees are going to fall away. You get what you focus on, and it counts for every part of your life. I wanted more interviews, and I met Constantin, and I get another interview, right? Like they put that into the world, and that's what I get back.
Much effort yourself, right? People, like, you start to attract the things you want. That's why,
exactly,
the law of attraction, right? If you go on the spiritual side, you now start to see how things work. You become a magnet for the things you want, as opposed to being the other side of the magnet that's going to repel what you want because you focus on what you don't want.
Yes.
And once you harness that power, then the sky is the limit, right? You can be the one that's living in the forest by himself or herself, and that's fine too, because that's what you want to do. Or you can become, the next whoever you look up to, and of course it's going to be you uniquely. And it's all fine. It's your choice in the end.
Okay. Listen, this was awesome. And I'm having a hard time stopping because we're getting really close to the end here. And I love this conversation. You and I we're both in Halifax. We're going to get a beer or whatever it is you drink, and we're going to hang out. Where can people get a hold of you? How do they reach you?
Yes, the best spot right now is LinkedIn. Constantin Morun, as you'll probably see it on the screen. It's a fairly unique name. There's no E in my Constantin name, so it's easy to find, and you'll find out more details. Unleash Thyself is my podcast. Season 1 is done, about 150 episodes almost, prepping for season 2 and all the other projects I'm doing. So you'll find out more. By the time this goes live, it's going to be close to when I'm launching a free course on essentially time mastery and how one, as a high achiever listening right now, you can go in, there's no strings attached. There's going to be a course to help guide you through some of the steps I mentioned. There's getting clear with yourself, improving the relationship with time and productivity, understanding why a vision is important, and beginning to create that. So then you, like you mentioned, Matthew, you have that focus on your vision, because then you know exactly where you're going, and the universe is going to guide you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, then, you guys, you heard it. Constantin Morun on LinkedIn. I'll put a link in the description, as well as a link to Unleash Thyself. Listen, I just been started following, and I've already sent off a couple of episodes of his podcast out in the world for other people to watch. So thank you for agreeing to do this, and being open to even the meeting at all earlier this week. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you over a beverage.
Yes, let's do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Constantine. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk next time.